Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live November 20th, 2019. I've got updates on the scam update. That's why I got my crayons out. I want to talk about the Mavic Mini and that GoPro mounted on top. It's not as pretty as it might seem. I've got opinions on the Sony 200 to 600 and lots more. Like, can you pick your favorite photo from each year of this past decade? But first, let me welcome my good friend and co-host today, David Card. How you doing, David?
I'm good. Thank you for having me once again. Good to be here.
I really appreciate you being here. It's nice to switch it up. We like to keep people on their toes. Who's it going to be, Steve or David?
You need to have a mystery third guest that
that we pop in the mix every once in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make that my vest. David and I were just talking about my vest. There's a reason I'm wearing this old school vest. It's not a great reason. I mean, partly I'm cold, partly it's going to help me reminisce. Because on this show, we're getting near the end of the year. We're starting to wrap up 2019.
Yeah.
As a kid and teenager and 20s and still today, I love the end of the year lists. David, are there any end of the year lists you look forward to, like the top 10 songs of the year or the top 10 movies? I feel like
I don't know. I'm so ADD that it's hard for me to even like put those lists together. But yeah, I should think about that a little bit more, because we are approaching the very end of this decade and this year.
That's right. And so that is, I started to think about that. I love those end of the year lists, but as you said, we're approaching the end of the decade. And I call myself a photographer. I wondered, how hard would it be for me to go back and find my favorite photos from each year, a photo from each year? And I think it brings up some neat questions. So we're going to tackle that a little bit later on in the show. So cool. Start thinking about it. If you guys are watching live, chat room, we'd like to welcome you. Maybe you can start digging into your archives and just starting to think about how difficult is it from a kind of a technology standpoint of like finding the last 10 years of photos. Do you have one place you can go? If you do, I'm really impressed. That's pretty awesome. And definitely. 2, how hard is it? Do you already have them all starred and rated? So, we'll talk about that. I feel like I'm starting to give it all away.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you tell them what you told them. That's what my one of my English teachers taught me in school. So.
Wow, and you remember that? I'm impressed. Yeah. I'm impressed. That's great.
The only thing I remember from that class.
All right. I do want to remind people that today's show is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is a fantastic all-in-one platform. Again, as we start to wrap up this year, maybe you are looking forward and saying, hey, you know what? I need to get serious about my business, or I just need to get serious about showcasing my photos in the best possible way. Squarespace makes it really, really easy to do that. And you can start at squarespace.com/photorectv. You'll save 10% off that first purchase. And it's not related to their sponsorship at all, but it does seem like they're going to go public soon. So it'll be interesting to see how this company evolves. They've a huge force in the YouTube advertising industry. I'm not sure there are many YouTubers in the photo and across the realm that aren't sponsored by them. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But you can really help this channel out if you start at squarespace.com/photorectv, and you really are building your website on one of the best platforms out there.
I concur with that. That's for sure.
That's right. You've got your own website on Squarespace as well, right?
I do. I have 2 websites, one for landscape, one for portraits, and both from Squarespace.
Nice. All right. And I did say hi to the chat room. I just really want to say hi. Thank you so much for joining us live. It's fantastic. It's wonderful having you in. I love seeing names that we see often, and I love seeing new names in there as well. So that's always fun. If you've got, I've got these new controls, newish now. We've been running StreamYard for over a month. And if you come up with a particularly pithy comment, I might splash it up on the screen, giving you your 15 seconds of mild fame. So keep that in mind as well. A couple of deals I noticed. So I put a newsletter out earlier today. I just want to remind people, if you're not subscribed to my newsletters, you can do that at photorec.tv. A couple of deals that caught my eye. One, the Nikon has been, the D850, Nikon D850, it's been sitting here for a while. That deal is ending soon, though. It's currently just $2,700. and that includes some goodies from B&H, like either you can get a XQD card or an external hard drive, a bag, so different things thrown in and included in that price. That's a pretty good deal.
That's a good deal. That's a fantastic camera all around.
Yeah. David, is the D850 kind of your everyday camera? Is that accurate?
You know, my everyday camera has been my Z6 ever since I got it. I don't know. It's just something about the mirrorless, the smaller, the lighter, and all that. But when I've been doing a lot of headshots lately, and I keep grabbing the D850. I've got so much resolution for editing. It is phenomenal. It really is a great camera. Nice. So I use it a lot. I use it a lot for the portraiture. I just feel like I really can't afford to miss it with that. Not that I can afford to miss it with anything, but those are my paying clients. I gotta nail it.
Gotcha. Yep. It's great. I think it is the best DSLR on the market still. Just really, really nice. Other end of the spectrum, a deal, and you can find these. Oh, I didn't do this yet. I'll link the show notes right down below this video in just a few moments. But the other deal is the Canon 40mm pancake lens. That's that little 40mm f2.8. It's currently on sale for $129. That's a really good deal on a really nice, just kind of all-around walk-around lenses. Another lens that's on super sale right now is the Rokinon Samyang 35mm f2.8 for Sony. It's $230, I think, off the top of my head. It's right around that mark. It's a great lens. Is it the sharpest lens? No, it's not the sharpest lens, but look how small it is. And $230, 35mm is a fantastic kind of walk around focal length. As I've been teasing, I think David Nakar, you and I talked about it a little bit. Steve and I talked about it a little bit more. I have a personal vacation. I don't know why I put that in quotes. Personal vacation trip in the future. The Thailand trip, and I really would like to travel light. And one of the things that is, at the top of my list is maybe just 35 on the Sony.
Nice.
Maybe. I feel like I talk a big game, but then once the trip comes, I'm just going to pile everything in the bag, and it'll be like 60 pounds. And I'll be like, this is light for me.
Yeah. So, well, when you said you want to travel light, I was just looking at that big honking lens on your desk. I was like, is he about to pick that up and say I'm traveling light? Yes. I know the struggle all too well. It's just, what do I bring? And I will say, I was just up in your neck of the woods 2 weeks ago and had such a great time. And after leaving Seattle, I went to Portland and went out and shot waterfalls and stuff there. And I did not bring my super wide, my 14 to 24. I was like, oh, I don't need that. I'm going to travel light. And dang it, I wish I'd brought that lens with me. So, it's like I don't know. You never can.
Oh, we just lost David. Hang on just a sec. While he was talking, I was busy putting the show notes in here. So we'll get him back in just a second, I'm sure. You really run into that issue, as he's saying. There are spots where you get into and you're like, I wish I'd brought X, Y, or Z. And the thing is, you just, if you make these decisions, one, I think it can be a great, learning experience. You walk out of the house with this 35mm lens and you're going to make it work. Is it a bummer if there's a gorgeous bald eagle in a tree half a mile away and this is the lens you have? Well, yeah, it is. But you're going to make it work again. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. I accidentally swiped on my mouse and lost the screen. So I'm back.
No worries. Yeah. Yeah. Kevin's blaming me. Kevin, it wasn't my fault. David he admitted to it.
It was
it is usually my fault. I'll take the blame. Yeah. So you had wished that you'd had that really wide?
Yeah. There were several shots I could have really used it. But it's okay. You just have to work with what you have. But it's a tough call. I think, for landscape, it is kind of almost a no-brainer. Have a wide lens. If you've got a super wide lens, I think it's kind of worth it to bring it, especially in a situation like that. But live and learn. And I still got some great shots I'm happy with. And that's one of the things I've learned about this is okay, so you show up, you don't have the lens you wish you had. Well, still just do what you can with what you have and try to walk away with something that you're proud of. And because that's all that's really going to matter in the end. And you can always go back to Thailand, Just
That's
anytime.
That's right. Hey, we're on the same page, because actually, as when I realized that you had disappeared, I started to say that basically, that
Yeah.
there are times certainly where you want this or that, but you make it work to the best, and I think it can be a great learning experience in a lot of cases.
Yes, definitely.
And I find on a lot of these trips, on a lot of the McKay workshops, I bring a lot of gear, because I am usually testing a few pieces of gear plus my own gear, and then I just have a gear problem on top of that. So I do find, I've talked about this before, but I do find a mental weariness, getting worn down by making the decision of what gear am I going to take out on this daily journey or this. And sometimes you can bring it all with you all the time easily. But even then you're spending all this time switching. So I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
I feel, I think all of us who have traveled, doing photography feel that it's very, it can be taxing on your brain, and you're like, I just want to enjoy this. I don't want to be stressing out about which lens I'm putting on. And yeah. It's balance.
And I've got the message up from Roy. Just a reminder, most of you in the chat room and watching this live are already Photo Enthusiast Network members. Thank you so much for your membership. We're really excited about the development we're working on. A completely revamped website that is million times better. That's a fact. 1,000,000 times better than what we've been running on. It's really, really good. And we're going to be excited to launching that very, very soon. But if you're watching this and you're not a member, you should consider joining, especially if you want to improve your photography. It is a fantastic community of just nice individuals that are supportive, constructive in their feedback. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love the interactions in the group. That's just part of the whole Photo Enthusiast Network, but the part that I'm most proud of is just how nice and helpful people are in the group. There's none of that. Well, let's just say it's like if they were talking in person, the way people talk to each other, usually person to person, respectfully, helpfully, and none of this like you're an idiot on the internet and I never have to see you actually in person. As we have so much of these days.
Yes, there's a lot of that going on.
Just a bit. And just one other bit of pen news, that is the Photo Enthusiast Network. The October image review video just went out. Fantastic images in there. And you still have a few days to submit for the November. So this is the monthly image critique where professional photographers sit down, usually David, Ali, and Steve, but sometimes guest photographers as well, use their years of experience to kind of critique and give you feedback and pick a favorite image from the group. That winner each month receives fantastic prize from Bay Photo, usually a decently sized print of whatever they want. Doesn't have to be the winning image. So, if you got a cute one of your kids and you submitted, something totally different, you can do the cute one of your kids. So that's really cool that Bay Photo does that. I think it's a really neat aspect of the whole Photo Enthusiast Network. And even if you don't win, you receive some valuable feedback on your images. Okay. Let's dive into the Lightroom tips and tricks section where we're going to dive into some photos. We got a few today, and we're going to keep it, a little bit more on the speedy. I was going to say rapid fire, but is there another YouTuber that uses that term, rapid fire critiques? Is that Fro?
It maybe. I think I've heard that, but I don't know. It might be him.
It might be him. So let me get my screen sharing and Lightroom up on the screen. And filter. We are just going to do, we're just going to start doing just one picture from each of you. I'll be posting that information before next week. If you've submitted two, we probably will be able to get to it next week, but we're going to try to keep this limited to just one from each of you today. So if you submitted more, hang on, we'll get to more down the road. Okay. And this is coming up for everybody. Looks good, David Carr. You can see this?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, great. All right. So first up, we've got Paul Anderson, who recently did I think it was back like August, September-ish, Katmai area bears trip, and has come away with some fantastic images and some images that I'm pretty jealous of.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice work, Paul. So popping over to the develop panel, this is part Lightroom's tips and tricks. Sometimes we dive into Photoshop as well. Sometimes it's a little bit of critiquing. David, what do you see here? What would be your first steps in maybe tweaking this image?
Well, man, it's a cool image. I love that the water is silky-ish, but not too silky.
Mhm.
I don't know if this was. Can we tell how long the exposure was on that? Let's
Yeah,
see. We
one
use.
fifth of a second. It's
Oh,
small.
1/5. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Mhm.
The only thing I would say when I just I always do this thing I've talked about, this border patrol. I always start looking around the edges and
Mhm.
seeing if there's anything around the edges that maybe is kind of pulling me away. And I do see those branches in the upper right-hand corner coming in. I don't know that they're serving the photo,
Mhm.
although that is kind of a tedious thing to take all of that out in Photoshop. It can be done. I wonder on the resolution of this shot. You've got, I mean, it's just, oh, it's close to 15 megapixel.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's good math. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually closer to
Oh, it's
20.
20. Yep.
Yeah, so you've got a decent amount of room there. You could probably crop this in closer to the bear and also lose some of that foreground. I just feel like it's not necessarily serving it when the actual thing we're looking at here is this bear behind this rock with the cool green moss. And I feel like it could be cropped in a decent amount, which you could crop out the branches or you
Yeah.
could just, I don't know, playing around with it like that, I think to me that serves the photo. You have to mess around. Sometimes I spend a lot of time cropping and just to figure out what works.
Yep, I hear you. I'm going to right click on this. This is something I don't do too often, but I'm going to say I'm channeling Steve, and I'm going to go and see what it looks like flipped.
Oh yeah.
Just I'm not sure why I wanted to do that. You know what I think I want? I want just the bear flipped. He's just. I totally agree in pulling in a little bit more. This water right here is just bright and kind of featureless and kept pulling my eye down away. So I agree with cropping that. I don't love those branches up there. I don't know. They're not terrible.
No,
But,
it's just they're kind of, there's certain things where, I mean, I dealt with this in Oregon when I was shooting these waterfalls. There was like this gorgeous shot, but there was this nasty like branch thing was coming in, and I spent probably 45 minutes taking it out in Photoshop.
Mhm.
But then it served. It was great. I thought it was so much better without it. So
yeah.
I don't know. That's just what I see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to leave it like this just for now, and I think it would be worthwhile to work over here a little bit in Photoshop. Paul, I think you did a neat thing here, though, as David, noticed and mentioned right off the bat, in that you've got a 1/5 of a second where you walk that line. The bear is still sharp, but you have just some of that motion in the falls behind it. And I am assuming this is a single shot, not a composite, which that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a great scene.
Yeah. This is a JPEG, but I'd brighten it just a little bit more. I want just a little bit more detail out of that bear. I hit the J key, shows the blue for the underexposed areas. I might bring the shadows up just a touch as well. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. Chris Bartel, she gave us two, what I believe is an edited version and then a unedited, or at least a less edited version. And this is immediately attention grabbing.
Very much so.
Steve uses the word a lot of story. You want a photo to tell a story. And I think there is, we don't know the whole story, but we know it's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This doesn't seem like it's a recent occurrence based on all of these trees being dead and the barn and the silos. I love this scene.
Yeah, that is like crazy. I haven't seen stuff like that very often. So
yeah. And that right there, I mean, just going and being someplace that captures something that's a little bit unique. I've never actually seen kind of like what looks like a permanently flooded farm area.
It's eerie.
It is eerie. I'm going to do something. So Chris, I know you have a nice virtual mat around this. I think that's fine. Let's pretend for a moment that there wasn't any virtual mat. That's not what I'm cropping out here. How does the story look if we really simplify it and we do something like just the barn out there and the trees? Does that lose too much? And that red, sorry, that red is from the little white post sign there. So get rid of that. Are we missing too much of the story here?
You know, if I can chime in on that, I think,
Yeah.
well, what I was seeing was keeping all of it, but doing a wide, like a wide crop, like almost that looks like a pano, you know, losing some of the water, because I feel like there's so much water in the foreground that you almost don't need it. The sky to me is really cool. And I would even bring that right hand crop line in past the green trees to where, you know, the barn's a little bit more to the right edge. Yeah. I mean, I think I would bring, right in there, and you could actually go left. Yeah. This is kind of how I would, because I feel like the house and the barn, it kind of just shows like this total loss of everything, you know, and which is tragic, but it makes for an interesting photo. I don't know. I think somewhere in that area is kind of what, I don't know. And I might even go wider with it. Do something like kind of like, you know, so, where it almost looks like a pano, you know?
Yep.
Not that you wouldn't make a pano necessarily of that scene, but just, yeah, I don't know. It kind of looks cool to me.
Yeah. And just a reminder, you can come over here to the aspect ratio, and a 16:9 is kind of pano for some, but you could also just come in here and say enter custom, or I have already saved a 2:1, which is very much a pano too. So if you wanted to, you knew you were going to print and you wanted to kind of print it, you know, kind of a normal aspect ratio or something. But of course, you work with somebody like Bay Photo, you can print at whatever aspect ratio you want. You can do custom prints. I really do like the skinny there. I'm just going to throw a graduated filter over the sky real quick, and I wonder if we get a little bit more drama up there if we just up the dehaze some.
Yeah.
Just
cool.
Just a bit. Another thing that I wonder, and I said we are going to keep this quick, so it's the last thing we're going to do, but I think black and white, because I know you worked on the color of the water there, Chris. You had kind of an original here, and then you ended up with something here. And I don't think it's bad, but I think a black and white can be strong as well.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Really cool scene.
Very cool. All right, we're going to move on. Roy helped Kevin get this into our group. Kevin was on our recent New England workshop with Steve Kaz and I. And just a really nice, classic leading line railway shot.
Yeah. Man.
So the first thing I notice is that we have one rail ending perfectly here and the other rail ending just a little bit above that spot. So when I go symmetrical, I want to try to be as symmetrical as possible. I hit the A key to keep that aspect ratio locked up there. It was unlocked. And I'm just going to move up and see if I can. It's going to be tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. Because he's a little off center anyway.
He's a little off center. Yep. So then maybe that doesn't bother me. Maybe that's fine. You go ahead.
Yeah, you know, it didn't bother me so much. I mean, I think the tendency would be to try to do everything very symmetric. In a way, I thought it was kind of cool to be a little off center just for artistic purposes. But I do think if you have a shot that is that is very much centered, that might be worth looking at as well. But overall, this is it's just like a perfect photograph as far as like, there's not a whole lot to change in the photograph. It's kind of all there. It is what it is, you know, it's like it's a railroad track just kind of going off into a vanishing point, and you exposed it well, the contrast, all that stuff is there. So I think just playing around with the crop, you might, you can get in Photoshop, obviously you can get in and start skewing things and you could make it look more centered, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is too. The only other place that I would work on this image is down here in the color panel. You could just kind of play a little bit and, move the reds back and forth and see if you can bring out just a little bit more saturation for the red and the orange and the yellow. And if you wanted to shift and see what that looked like, so you go, oh, look, part of it's spring and more of it's fall. So I really love this panel when working with colorful images because you can dial in. And just a reminder, if you switch over to the HSL section, you have the little donuts. And what the donuts allow is for you to click and say, well, this color right here, now you drag up and down and notice over on the right that it's moving more than one slider at a time. So it's smart enough to say the color you're picking kind of spans the orange yellow area. And so for the saturation, it allows you to do that, which is kind of a cool trick to be able to do. It's neat. Nice job, Kevin. And we'll get to your next one next week. And same with Maggie. You had two, but today I picked this one. Maggie's currently, I can't remember where. Croatia or Portugal or something like that.
Wow. So
very similar to Paul's picture, there's a couple of things that are kind of grabbing my attention early on that I want to fix, and cropping can just. And that's just this little hint of this white post and this little hint of white right here. So I'm going to come in just as those end and up right there and see what that looks like.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit more because of the shadow here. Or if I wanted to, oops, sorry. That's the spot remover. I got the spot remover because if I liked my crop a lot, but I wanted to get rid of that shadow, well, then I could just kind of pick roughly from someplace to just clone it out.
I definitely think it's stronger. I mean, again, guys, I think if you really start by looking around the edges of your frame, no matter how you shot it, if there are things in the frame, that's always a good place to start, because you're working your way towards the focal point, towards whatever it is that you're really the main thing you're trying to convey. But you want to make sure you get rid of anything that might be a distraction. And I did feel like that little white post on the left was a distraction, and then the little piece on the right. But now it just kind of cleans that up, and now it's you look at it now. I think you straightened it a little bit, or leveled it out a little, which I think is another very important thing. Is make sure, unless you're doing something that's intentionally angled, it's kind of like you meant to do it. Really try to make sure things look level and plumb and all that. And then it's just a matter of, do you want to try some black and white or something just a little more dramatic, just because you've got this old stuff in here. But yeah, it's a cool scene. I mean, it's very unique. Obviously, this is not something you see every day.
Yeah, I agree. This is a raw straight out of Maggie's camera as well.
Oh, cool.
So there's no edits have really been done to it. So the first thing I am actually going to do after the kind of the crop, and I usually do crop pretty early on in the process. I don't know if that where you fall to. You crop early on or towards the end?
It depends on the photograph. If like with portraiture, a lot of times I wait till the end because I might want to try something different but in those situations, a lot of times there's not a whole lot to crop out. If I go into Photoshop having already cropped something, then I'm kind of stuck with it when I bring it back into Lightroom. So it just depends. It depends on the photograph.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to point out here is that there's definitely a story within a story. So we have these fishing boats nestled in this harbor with cannons, and an old tower really has a cool feel to it. But then there is the story of just these boat bows or sterns. I don't know which way is which. I guess they're the bows with the names on them, all lined up here in a little bit of the reflection. So that, I'm just zooming in as a quick kind of, this is what a crop could look like. Or even better, when you're there, Maggie, taking a picture where you really zoom in and just go for these repetition of these bows.
Yeah.
I just really fill the frame. One other thing I could do right now is grab the brush tool, up the texture, clarity, and exposure a little bit, and brush down here in the water, with the goal being to bring that reflection out a bit more. And so you can start to see that really kind of show up there, because I love reflections. We were talking about this. We've been talking about this off and on over the last couple of weeks.
Right.
We've both posted nice reflection shots on our Instagrams, and feeling they're a little cliche at times, but they're just so. I like them.
Yeah, I do too.
So I'm going to be unapologetic about it. I like reflections.
I do too. I mean, it's oftentimes more interesting than if the water's really turbulent or murky in a way that it doesn't reflect. It's always it can be a very pleasing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And last one, Kevin Walks got one from Bryce Canyon. Cool. And Kevin, 2 weeks in a row that you've really submitted some really stunning images. You had one from the Narrows last week. Now this one, the light here in Bryce is just so lovely.
That's gorgeous.
It's a really nice image.
It really is. What's the focal length? I can't see.
33 f8, 1/100th of a second.
Okay, that 33. You know what? It looked like a telephoto shot, which I love. I mean,
yep.
Whatever it is, I love it. It looked like maybe something shot with like a 70 to 200 from a distance, but I really like where everything is placed.
Yep.
Might be a little hazy. Maybe there's more contrast to be had, just a touch. I don't know.
All right. Yeah. I hear you. And I feel like that, I go back and forth. The haze does give a little sense of depth to a degree, but it does feel a little hazy. So let's see what happens if we I threw a linear graduated filter over that, and I'm just going to up the dehaze a little bit. So it just backs off back there. And I might warm it just a touch. I find when I start to use the dehaze a little more heavy-handed, things start to turn blue. So then I typically warm it up a little. Yeah. That's nice. It's a great image, Kevin. Really nice.
Very cool.
And I feel the same as you do, David, that it has a more kind of telephoto compressed feel to it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of times even though it's not a telephoto, a lot of times in landscape, we think we want everything to be wide, but there are times when you're just trying to isolate this one area where really interesting things are happening. And of course, with all these formations, there is just so much texture and movement there.
Yep, I think a telephoto shot more in this range can be good. I don't like cropping this one to that.
No,
but,
I know what you mean.
That
though.
could work.
Very cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, folks, thanks so much for submitting. If you're watching this show and you are not a Pen member and you'd like to submit photos for us to take a look at, show you some tips and tricks on how to make them better, well, you can become a Pen member, photorec.tv/pen, or just go to photoenthusiastnetwork.com. But I never spell enthusiast right, so that's why I made a shortcut, photorec.tv/pen.
Good.
I need those shortcuts.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, so let's jump into a little bit of gear news. A couple of news points. This might surprise people, or maybe not. I happen to have the GH5 plugged in up here. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy.
Be careful.
Yeah, I thought it was easier to get down than that. There we go. GH5, I'm bringing this down. I don't use this that often these days because the Sony just does a great job of video, and I rarely record myself out there like this with that fully articulating screen, but that does make me a little sad. But the good news is it's got a firmware update in just the last couple of days. Panasonic released a slew of firmware updates for the GH5, for the G9, for several of their older micro four thirds cameras. And I just really like it when a company does that. When they release a firmware update that actually adds some nice features, better autofocus, better stability during video recording, something beyond just bug fixes, which is what today so many firmware updates seem to be, just kind of bug fixes.
I agree.
And so I got a link in the show notes, which now are down below the video. I was able to complete that. If you don't see them there and you're watching live, you can refresh. But if you're just watching this recorded, they're there already. DP review guys, Chris and Jordan, do a great quick look at not only the GH5, but actually mostly at the Panasonic G9, which is a fantastic photo camera. It's now sitting at $1,000 new. It got a bunch of firmware, or it got a firmware update, which brings it up on par to many of the video features of the GH5. For most of us, we care about. There are still some reasons to buy the GH5 for kind of your dedicated video shooters. But if you're in that hybrid land, that G9 now sitting at under $1,000 with this firmware update becomes a really compelling thing. So if you want to know more about that, go watch their video. It's pretty impressive. It's a short and sweet video, and it just really nicely, as they usually do, covers the differences with that. So that's good. Cool. Have there been any exciting firmware updates for the Nikon D850? I can't remember.
You know, not that I remember either, you know, in a while. And I'm so slow sometimes to do that stuff. Yeah, I don't really think there's been anything too exciting. I wish that they had a better autofocus system on the D850 for video, because it has the capability of being a great video camera, but you really can't use the autofocus, and that's a shame. That's really why I bought the Z6, so that I could do some video.
Yeah. Yep. And that's where those mirror, a lot of people ask, what are the benefits of the mirrorless? There are a couple. For most of them, though, it is that the autofocus during video is much improved.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's fantastic.
And that is still something where, I say the G9 is an excellent camera, but it's still not one I'd recommend for serious sports or birds in flight, because it uses that DFD, depth from defocus technology. It's just not quite as fast as you see on stuff like Sony or Olympus or anybody else, really. But it's still a very good all-around camera. Another bit of news that is exciting, Sigma is going to announce their Canon RF roadmap in 2020. David, do you own any Sigma lenses?
I don't. I should. I'm actually thinking about getting a Sigma 85. So,
yeah, yep. Dave McKay and I reviewed that lens several years ago now. I think maybe 2 or 3. It is the art. Yep, the 85-1.4.
Yeah.
We put it up against the 85-1.2 on Canon side, and just found the Sigma to be better all around.
That's cool. Well, I just sold I had a Nikon 85-1.4. I sold it, and in the last couple of days, I've really wished I had it for some portrait stuff. So
it's a fantastic focal length on full frame. 85 focal length is actually what I'm shooting this live video on. It is the Sony 85-1.8 on my camera.
Yeah.
That's another lens that's in the running. Maybe I'll just go to Thailand with that lens.
There you go.
Yeah. See, now I'm taking 2 lenses, right? That's what I just said. Plus, it's a mess. But all right, so back to the story, because this is exciting and interesting, I think, because right now, Canon and the RF mount, they've got their lenses, which we've talked about before. They are fantastic. They're very, very good, but they are expensive, and I don't think they match up so well with their more consumer-oriented bodies. That is, the current Canon RF lenses are really prosumer and above. A 28-70 f2, that's amazing, but it costs $3,000 and it weighs 3 pounds. So having a third party like Sigma, which is really doing well for itself, I think, and just over the last, I'd say like 5-6 years, have been churning out these art series lenses that in general are very good. The prices have come down now. There's great Sigma sales. Again, my newsletter that went out today highlighted some of those. Those are some of the lowest prices they've ever been. There's nice competition because Tamron now is coming along, but it's nice to see this. This is what's going to really help Canon in some ways. Help them, I think, with people feeling like there's a nice choice of lenses, but maybe not help them financially, because now they're competing against a third-party lens manufacturer that usually produces much cheaper lenses than they do, even if they are a little bit better in some cases. I don't know. Chat room, I'd love to see you. And if you're watching this non-live, that's the recorded version. And if you own a Sigma lens, let me know what you own. The 35, the 50, the 85, they're all really, really nice lenses. And then they have their crop 18-35, which, I know that's a shortish range, but that is a fantastic lens that a lot of people use on Micro Four Thirds with speed boosters. So options there. And speaking of options, we've got Sigma announcing a 24-70 f2.8 lens that's going to ship in early December for $1,099. This will be for Sony systems, so Sony FE mounts. That is exciting, because then you now have, it is exciting and it's also frustrating, because now you're going to be like, well, I could get the Tamron 28-75 for, I think that's about $799 or $849. Or I could spend a bit more and get the 24-70 f2.8 from Sigma for $1,000. Or I could spend a little bit more and get the 24-105 from Sony. I think those 3 are all in the running for great general purpose walk around lens. Yeah. And I've been shooting with a 28-75 for the last year and a half now, and I've been mostly happy with it. I don't have any quality issues with it. It is more missing that little bit wider at times.
Yeah. Oh, you mean from the 24 to the 28?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
because if you look through a 24 to 70 and just just rotate it to 28, it seems like such an insignificant amount. But sometimes we're looking for as much width as we can. Just that little bit of extra. It's funny how much it doesn't seem like much at all, but then it can make a difference.
Yeah, there are times, and I almost hesitate to mention it because it's not often, but it's been enough that I'm like, I would like 4 more millimeters of width. And maybe that's because I've been conditioned walking around with a 24 to 70. You did when you did this trip. You just brought your Z6 in 24 to 70. Was that correct?
Yeah, I brought a couple other lenses that
Oh,
I
okay.
never used, like at all. And so it was funny, talking about like, traveling light. I ended up not using my other lenses, but that 24 to 70, it's funny because that I've always had a love-hate relationship with that focal range. Even though it is very versatile, I find myself frustrated on the 70 end because I feel like I just want more reach. But that being said, when you have a lens that is as fantastic as this Nikon, I just love this. I talk about it all the time. I love that 24 to 70 2.8S. Paid a fortune for it, but gosh, it has something to it. So it stays on my camera 99% of the time. It's just worth it.
Yeah, I mean it's a very versatile focal range, and having an f2.8 lens across that, and plus if it's so nice and sharp like that S version is, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Cool. That's all the news stories that I think I have right now. Let's move into talking a little bit about 10 years of nostalgia. And I mentioned I'm wearing this vest. I should just say this vest, not this one. This is kind of a silly story, but this vest was one of my favorite pieces of clothing that I wore in college. I loved it. I bought it from Campmore magazine, which for East Coast people was this outdoor store that sent you this, like, it was a minuscule phone book looking catalog with paper thin pages, and all of the products were hand drawn little sketches, no color, any of that stuff. And I used to love getting that catalog, flipping through it. I ordered this vest, had it all through college. And at some point, I must have got rid of it because I was like, well, look at it. It's kind of goofy looking, big blue pocket, and fleecy, the old school fleecy style. And then last year, I was like, I really missed that vest.
Hey.
And I Googled Campmore vest and found it on Etsy. Somebody selling one.
Nice.
I bought it. $20. So and I'm happy again.
So great.
But I wasn't in college in the last 10 years. Let's not confuse this. It's been a little longer than that. And as we kind of opened the show, we talked a little bit about 10 years. We're about to wrap up this decade. Totally human construct number and all that. But let's stick with it because somebody else, we all follow it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how hard would it be, David? How hard would it be for you to find your favorite photo that you captured over the last 10 years? And I say that knowing 10 years ago, you were a pretty different person.
Yeah, I just started my journey into photography about 7 years ago. It would be, I feel like for me, finding my favorite photo of the last 10 years, all I have to do is probably rewind about 2 years because I feel like I've gotten better and better. And the things that I thought were good 7 years ago, I look at now and go, wow, I mean, all I knew to do was crank the clarity all the way up in Lightroom, and I thought I had a good photo. So you start to learn these nuanced things and get better and better at that stuff. And so, yeah, I think within the last few years. But that being said, having done all these McKay trips, I mean, just trying to find a favorite out of all those trips is really difficult. And a lot of times, I don't know if you guys do this, but I just forget about photos. You'll be going through something, you'll be like, oh, I totally forgot about that shot. I love that shot. Or one that you started editing or you kind of marked it to edit and you never edited it. And then you come across it and you're like, what about this one? So it's really hard to do that. But maybe the key is to just build a little, a collection in Lightroom and just start throwing those photos in when you see them. It's very easy to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think this is a tricky problem from a couple of different standpoints, but it also is I think something worth talking about right now because we are about to go into this new decade. And if you're watching this show, wherever you are in your photo journey, maybe you got serious 6 months ago. Maybe you got serious 6 years ago. What can you do to set yourself up for success over the next 10 years? And maybe you don't have aspirations to make this your full-time business. Maybe you're very happy with it being a hobby, but still, wouldn't it be nice to have to kind of, you know, as what David's describing, be like, hey, where are my favorite photos? Click. Oh, there they all are, and feel kind of organized. Yeah. So I think it's got a couple of different, you know, aspects to this issue. It's a meaty issue. And so, you know, I don't have any answers right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about one. I'll show my Lightroom catalog. So I have two main Lightroom catalogs. I have the one for the year I'm currently living in. That makes me seem like I'm a time traveler. I'm not. That I have one for the current year, and I have one that is all past years archived together and just called, you know, Master 2012 to 2018. Actually, what it is it's not until 2013. I don't know. I know I have other hard drives somewhere back here in cabinets that probably have 2010, 2011, and 2012 on them. But they don't seem to be in my catalog. So let me just show this real quick. Not an underwater time lapse. That's not what I want to show. All right, so here we are. You can see 2013. It's also interesting to see the number of pictures taken each year. I think that's always really interesting. Yeah. But what you can do is you can say all photos at the top. I do have them organized by folders. That is the years. And that is an organization system that exists outside of Lightroom as well, because again, right now we're talking about Lightroom, but will we be talking about Lightroom in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years?
Yeah, who knows?
So I don't necessarily want you to tie yourself to one single program. But if you come up to the metadata, you can, of course, say, show me all the pictures that I took in a certain year. And you notice there are a few more years listed here with just like 1 or 2. And then for some reason, I have 138 pictures from 1904. Maybe another clue that I am a time traveler, but I don't know. But let's go up to 4 stars and see. So in 2013, I have 3 identical images rated 4 stars. Just this lightning bolt above Wantasticate Mountain in thing. I don't think this is my favorite picture from that year. I'm pretty sure it's not, but for some reason, somehow this got the highest rating of that year in my Lightroom catalog. So one of my goals this year was to be more organized and make sure I was careful in my rating system. I talk about this on workshops. I don't know if you're the same or not, David Carr, but to raise to a 5-star level, I'll have only a couple of those a year. Because that lets me say, okay, show me my 5 stars over all of these years. So if, for instance,
wise. Yeah.
Well, I try to be. So if we go back here and we say, show me my 5 stars, then we see out of 2013 to 2018, we have what, just 31 pictures. And most of those are actually from 2015 and on, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe even 2015 and on.
Pretty epic shots, though.
So, well, thank you. And that's a nice thing. I mean, it might sound harsh to say really only a couple get 5 stars each year, but then when I choose my 5-star out of all of them together, it is a very selective group of images, and there's no kind of going back and forth. These are my very, very favorites, my best of my best.
Yeah, that's. You know, I have to admit that I don't have a great system. I don't have a great set of habits in place still after all these years. And when I bounce from doing a McKay trip with landscape and wildlife to then doing headshots for a corporation, it's 2 different parts of my brain working. And so sometimes when I go to load up those portraits, those headshots, I just go through and hit select for the ones that I want to try to edit. But then I'll hit 5-star, meaning like this is one they liked, and I forget that like clicking 5 stars could be a really, I don't know. I think I'm using it the wrong way. So just hearing what you had to say, that, you know, I'm probably not going to go back through all of my photos all the way back to 2012 and rework all that. But I think moving forward, I'd like to come up with a better system. And I think it is about building those habits, because it's very easy when you load 3,000 photos after a trip to just sort of like let it go haywire, and then you end up with this mess, and you don't remember what's what, and it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been on workshops before with people that only got serious about the organization of their photos later in life and felt so completely overwhelmed that it might seem like a trivial thing. Oh, life goes on. You got a messy hard drive full of photos. But I honestly had a client in tears because they knew they were proud of a lot of the images they had. And one caveat here is you don't see any of my kid or family pictures. I'm taking that out of this equation because as I started, I'll show you another spot where I went to look for 2010 pictures in a minute. I can't pick a favorite photo when you start to include. First, there's pictures of my dad who's no longer around. So instantly those are like awesome to me. And then pictures of my kids being goofy. My 13-year-old right now, half the time I want to strangle him. Henry, are you watching this? I hope you're doing your homework. But you look back when he was 3, oh my God, he was the cutest thing on earth. So I really separated family pictures and said, I'm not talking about those as my favorite, but the ones where I've been kind of a deliberate photographer setting out to take a nice picture. So that side. But this person was really proud of their photos and felt like there was no organization to them and they were going to die. I don't mean to be grim, but they were going to die and leave this mess, and their photos were like, kind of gone forever because there'd been no organization and backup to it. And David McKay has a good system. He has folders for each year, and inside those he has his favorite photos, which I really like because if Lightroom died on me today or I decided to stop using it tomorrow, this organization system really is only in Lightroom. Sure, they're in those folders for each of those years, but if I go and look at those folders outside of Lightroom, I don't see my favorites. So I do have to come up with some way to find and pick and long-term have those listed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So were you gonna say something?
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's the tricky thing too is, now we've got our phones that are in the mix, which, my phone shots don't show up in Lightroom typically, but I've got, I'm an Apple user. And so I've got the Apple Photos app and all that. And there's 40,000 photos in that mix as well. And that's typically family and friend type stuff. But still, every time I share a photo to Instagram or Facebook, it ends up on my phone, which ends up in that catalog. So it's just a big hodgepodge mess. I don't know that there's a way that I'm going to have like a sustainable way to like always be on top of it. But one thing I have started doing, and it takes a little time, but it's worth it, is to get at the end of the year, sometime in December, I will go through all of 2019 this year in Lightroom and just start weeding out junk, because there's a lot of stuff in there I don't need. A lot of it's just like I'm not going to do anything with it. And once I see that I've already gotten the images from, like, let's say Tanzania, I've got the bulk of images. These are the ones I'm the most proud of that I want to hang on to. I'm really not afraid to ditch the others. I know that's a little controversial. Some people are like, I never delete anything, but man, it's kind of nice. It just kind of like, it's like cleaning out your closet a little bit. You just, that sense of declutter is really nice.
Yeah, I agree. I try my best during a trip to get rid of the junk right away. It sounds like you're a little more heavy-handed with the delete, and it is a little controversial, but as long as you're comfortable with that, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I then try to make sure that I am ranking and rating the images so that at the end of the trip, and I say, where are my favorites from this trip? There they are. And then I get to the end of 2019. But as you're kind of saying, the next step, so Dave McKay's got a folder system that he then places these in.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I throw a lot of stuff on Google Photos. It's what I started to show.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
But there isn't a great way to say, is this my favorite picture from that year? You can type in and search by year. I typed 2011, and this was one of the first ones I remember as being really pretty proud of back in 2011.
Yeah, that's very cool.
But one other photo I think I want to show you is I went through this little phase of sticking googly eyes on stuff I found around the house, and in some corner of the house or the drain, I found this, and I just thought that was great. And then this was a 2010 photo that definitely has some things wrong with it, but I'm pretty proud of it, and it's just kind of a beautiful.
It's good to see. I think it's good to see these little milestones in your growth as a photographer too.
Yeah.
Like and I do get heavy-handed with the deletion, but usually that's when there's like 25 of the same shot pretty much. There's just like a minor difference between them, and I've already edited one that I love, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
really
great.
need all this other stuff. Now, if it's, a completely different image that I don't totally love, but it's got some potential, I'm certainly not going to let go of that. But it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard
Yeah.
to stay on top of that.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's worthwhile. And so really just keep on this, folks. And you touched on the other thing that I think is really worthwhile in this. It's really interesting to see where you've come from.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there are times where you can kind of get into this feeling of like, I'm not really improving, but then you look back at your pictures. It's great to see how far you've come, because we all have. You've all made improvements. They might feel slight, but they're probably more significant than you think.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'll just to chime in real quick on that. I think what's going to happen with all of you, if you just keep at it, is you'll start to feel these little milestones from time to time. You'll just be like, gosh, I've gotten better. Like I probably wouldn't have been able to take that shot 2 years ago, or I might have been able to take it, but I wouldn't have been able to edit it and show it this way. And it's this incremental thing, but you start to feel like you're mastering it. And it's a really cool feeling when you start to feel like, man, I'm kind of getting this like on another level than just moving sliders, and it's frustrating sometimes getting there, but it's really rewarding when you feel those little milestones.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll wrap this up and just say that I think it's worthwhile taking the time to stay as organized as you can with your shoots. Maybe you can wait to the end of the year if you don't shoot a ton and kind of pick out the best of the best from that. But then to do something with them, get them out of Lightroom or whatever photo program you use, put them someplace else. Squarespace, you could make a website, put them there. You could buy space at someplace like Zenfolio. I still pay them, and I actually do have older pictures. That was another spot I went and looked at. Maybe just folders, I said already. Or, something like Google Photos. And again, make an album for each year. Favorite from 2012, favorite from 20, something that makes it easy for you down the road to find and look at and enjoy. And neither of us said this, but you could also print each year. You could actually physically print a picture.
Yeah.
So
I recommend it.
Yeah, highly. All right. David Carr, you got a bit of a sad story. You want to tell your sad gear story?
Yeah, I'll recall this story. Well, I do portraits and headshots and things like that. I was actually doing school photos at the school that my boys go to this week, and I use a big strobe light with a softbox on what's called a C stand. It's like a chrome looking stand. They're very, very common in like the grip world and the whole movies and TV and photography. You don't typically put a heavy light on one of these stands, but I did, and I've done it a lot, and never had an issue. I use sandbags. I'm typically careful, but this time, no. There you go. There's the C stand. They're great stands. They're super sturdy and great for so many things, and easy to manipulate and move. But I had one fall over the other day with all of this weight on it. My expensive Profoto strobe, and it hit my table that was holding my laptop. Sent my laptop flying onto the floor. Yeah, you can see how much is on the line there. They're super nice lights. They're amazing, but my gosh, got a big crack in the light. The handle was cracked. The light still worked. I mean, they're built like tanks in that sense. I was able to finish the shoot, but the light's got a big crack in it. The laptop has a dent in the corner of the screen. My 2-year-old MacBook Pro, and I had to just roll with the punches in front of all these kids. And, I didn't say anything out loud that was inappropriate. I might have been saying things inside, but it's just stuff. But I'm such a perfectionist, and it really frustrated me. But it's all good. It'll. This too shall pass.
Sorry, it's always a bummer when that happens to gear. Any lessons to take away from that?
Yeah, I think it's easy sometimes to get too comfortable with our gear, and it's kind of like driving when you feel like, oh, I got this, and you're like looking at your phone and you're messing around. Like, you can never be too careful sometimes with this stuff, especially expensive gear that you've got to use professionally. accidents happen. They happen to everybody, but just make sure things are tight and good. And like when you're putting your lens on your camera on a trip or something, make sure it's on there. I've so often, like, not so often, but several times I've thought it was clicked and it wasn't, and I could have dropped my lens. And just slow down a little bit. It's worth it in the end. And you probably will save yourself a lot of headache and money.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another, especially when you're shooting clients, I feel like I can get tense at times and feel a little rushed. And I feel like that's a perception you're giving the clients, like, oh, they look a little nervous. And so if you slow down and you're more methodical, I think you kind of, you have this air of, I got this. We're all good.
Yeah, absolutely. I struggle with that too in front of clients. I feel like I'm like they're looking at their watch the whole time, and not the kids weren't, but I just I do feel this pressure to like be moving quickly, and that's where I get myself in trouble. So I think learning to slow down and just be professional pays off.
Yeah. We've all been there in the accidents, talking about the 85. Christina used to own the 85 Canon, and it was set up on a tripod. This was totally my fault, borrowing her lens in a situation that wasn't so stable. And, it fell over right onto that front element. That was an expensive repair.
Gosh.
Yeah. So it happens. And I think, I think it's great advice, just taking a little bit of time. Yeah. And everything's better.
Yeah, everything's better. Absolutely.
All right. We are starting to wrap the show up. What else? Oh, scam updates. So, David Carr, you weren't on the show last week.
No.
I had gotten an email that said, "Dear sir, I would love you to shoot a big family reunion. I've got 60 people coming. How much would it be for your time to shoot them for 8 hours plus provide 6 canvas prints? I eagerly await your reply." And being part of different photo groups over the years, I'm kind of, I'm a little wise to these scams. But it also didn't have any immediate alarm bells, other than the fact that they were writing me, and I don't publicly have anywhere information that says I shoot these kind of events anymore. So I was like, this seems kind of scammy. But I wrote back and I said, I'd be happy to do this for you. I charge, I made it like $6,000. And here you can see the invoice. So we did some back and forth, and very quickly some alarm bells started going off that this was totally a scam. You can see that it's kind of hard to see. I did it all in crayon. This is the invoice. Photo coverage, $1,200. Canvases, $480. Then, so what set the alarm bells off is she's like, can you pay for the venue? I will pay you extra, but the venue guy can't take my credit card. So I'm supposed to include that fee. And then I put a nice guy tip, $800, total of $5,980. I sent this to her, and she wrote back almost immediately. She's a day or two later. Can you send me an electronic version? And as we talked about in chat last week, basically what these people do is you bill them through your credit card or invoicing provider, and somehow they get a hold of them and say, hey, this person, I paid this invoice, but this person is, jacking me around, refund my money. So then somehow they get that money, even though they never paid you.
Right, of course.
And I don't know what else they do once they have your number. Scary things.
Oh, how clever. Gosh.
How clever. So I wrote back and said, I don't have any way to send an electronic invoice. What I sent you is what I got. Just send your credit card info. And now they're like, okay, but you tell me what credit card provider you use. And so I don't even want to. So never mind. Gosh. Never mind. I wrote back, actually started last night. I started to write about Elf on the Shelf. Those Elf on the Shelves. It's just totally random. I was like, let's just waste this person's time. So I was like, I'm really busy. I'm shooting all of these families that have Elf on the Shelf, and they want their kids posing with them. Do you know about this thing? It's something that is really popular here in Washington.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I have to admit, I've had some fun with some scammers. It's the people when you try to sell something on eBay or Craigslist or something like that, and when somebody immediately responds, they're like, I'm happy with your price. In fact, I will pay $100 more if you'll overnight it to me, because I've got to get it to my cousin who's traveling abroad next month. And I'll play along with that sometimes, and just have fun, because I'm like, if you're going to waste my time, I'll waste a little bit of your time too. I mean, I get so frustrated with all the different things we have to do to keep our computers and our phones secure, all these different ways we have to log in now, and this, two-factor authentication. If morons wouldn't do stuff like this, we wouldn't have to have all these extra security measures. But thus is the world we live in.
Thus is the world we live in. It's a little frustrating. All right, before we start to wrap up and answer a couple of Q&As, real quick, want to finish talking about gear on the table. One, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I talked about this. And on the show last week, I talked about this little Mavic Mini does not shoot 4K. Its highest frame resolution is 2.7K at 30 frames per second. So close to 4K, but not 4K. Is that a deal breaker? Clearly, I bought it. This is mine. This is not on loan to me for review. And shortly after that, I was like, well, I wonder if it can hold a GoPro. And I'm not the only one who's thought that. Other people have. And I saw and showed on last show somebody who mounted a GoPro to the top of it. So first off, I think my heavy metal one, all I had in the house last week was a heavy metal one, so I couldn't do it. That's not a heavy metal band. It's a heavy metal cage. So I got my hands on a plastic one. And I have to say, I don't know what's different about other people's Mavic Minis, but here, let me show. I can barely get it off the ground. It kind of acts like it's going to work, and I've turned the audio off here. But let me just say that the poor little Mavic Mini is working its heart out. It is trying so very hard to go up, and it just can't quite do it. There were a couple other times where I got it to go a little bit higher. But basically, it's kind of stuck at this altitude.
The little Mavic that could.
Yeah.
Or couldn't.
Couldn't, right.
Yeah.
And the examples other people saw, they were flying the Mavic Mini with the GoPro Hero 8 on it. This is the 7. The 7 actually weighs a little less than the 8. So if anybody out there saw my show last week and then went and looked at other people doing it, I'm not quite sure what they got going on that's making it work so much better. But don't feel like this is a viable real world solution to get 4K right now. Yes, you might, even if it does work a little bit better, I'd still be really nervous about fly time and it suddenly failing, because there were times where it would get up higher, 10 feet off the ground and start to fly kind of normally, and then really just descend pretty quickly. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. And then the other thing is this 200 to 500 sitting on the table. Sorry, 200 to 600. I'm really impressed with it. I'll have a full review at some time in the near future. But basically, really the only drawback, I put this lens against the Sony 100 to 400. Really, the only drawback is maybe not quite as versatile as the 100 to 400, because that 100 to 200 range can be really nice, but and it is heavy lens, and it's big, but it is sharp and it is fast, and it's cheaper than the 100 to 400. So if you're more interested in the wildlife, less interested in a versatile travel lens zoom that can also be done wildlife, which is the 100 to 400, I think it's a great lens, and I can happily recommend it to people. You just have to be aware of this weight. It's significant.
Is that a constant aperture on that lens?
No, it is not. It's a 5.6 to 6.3.
Okay, that's what I figured. That's similar to the Sigma and the Tamron, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, very, very similar to the 150 to 600. I would put this lens a bit sharper and a bit faster.
Cool.
And of course, the fact that it's native Sony, and you've got the focus hold, you've got the 3 types of optical stabilization. It's just really, really nice. It comes in at what, just about $2,000, I think. Is that right? I should know that. So yeah, pretty good. And again, just 600 is really starting to get pretty serious. Yeah, $2,000 for wildlife, and so
absolutely
nice. And it seems to work decently with the 1.4 teleconverter as well. I haven't carefully looked at all of those images yet, but early test results show that it's pretty impressive.
Cool. That's nice.
Yep. All right. I think we covered all of that stuff. We've got a couple of questions that we want to answer. Adam wants to know, would we recommend any ND filters in the $70 range for the 67 millimeter size? He understands preferably you'd invest a little bit more in filters, but this is just for a stocking stuffer to start someone out.
I don't know. You know more about those. You've reviewed them, and
Yep. Yeah, Adam, you got a couple things going for you. One is 67 millimeters is on the smallish side, so that can help keep the cost down. And also, indie filters, there certainly are some junky ones out there, but the fact that they are just a darkening piece of glass, really. There's nothing too fancy, not like a circular polarizer working. They can keep the cost down. And I say all that, and then I confidently went and Googled, and I did struggle to really kind of find ones in that price range that I could be really happy about. The struggle, there is a Hoya little multi-filter system for 67 that gets you a UV filter. Well, that's just a waste of glass. But it does have a circular polarizer and it has an ND, and that comes in at about $60. I thought, hey, that's pretty good. But that ND is just a 3-stop, which I don't know. You don't do a whole lot of filter use, David?
not a whole lot, but
Yeah.
I do know that 3 stops is not going to be a huge amount of light blocking. It's I have a 10 stop, which is almost too much most of the time. But
yeah, that's how I feel too. I think the six stop is a nice sweet spot. I have
Absolutely.
a 6 and a 10, and it seems that I reach for the 6 more often than not. The 10 can certainly be used for some cool, really long exposures, but I think the 6 is more versatile.
Yeah.
So really, definitely. I found one, the Format High Tech. I know this brand. This is good. This is a 9 stop. That's at $70 for the 67, and then the 6 stop at 63. So I can recommend that. But I tell you, it was a struggle to find a budget. There are lots of budget 3 stops and some 4 stops, but of other brands. Hoya is decent. Tiffin is lower budget, but it's decent again. I don't know really of too many issues. And then there are some really budget variable neutral density filters, but you don't want to stay away from those. They introduce too many problems, and they are a little bit more complicated and seem to invite more color casts. That's the real bad thing about the cheaper indies, is you get kind of a color cast in there.
Yeah.
So you got to watch out for that. We've got Kevin wants to know, what's a better portrait lens out of these 3? A Canon 50mm, a Canon 100mm, or a Canon 70-200mm. Kevin, I'm not sure if you're talking full frame or crop. Let's say that you're talking full frame. What do you think? Let's take the Canon out of the equation.
Sure.
50mm full frame, 100mm, or 70-200 for portraits.
I would definitely not use a 50. You can do portraits with a 50, but you do get a little bit of a bulging thing in the face. It doesn't compress things as nicely. It's very subtle, but you might just, when you put it up against a 70-200, you'll see, oh wow, it just looks a little more pleasing with the 70-200. Yeah. I've been using the 70-200 a lot lately for portraits, and I love it. It's versatile. You have a lot of room there. It's 2.8, and it just, getting back far from your subject, zooming in, you can get great bokeh and you can get great compression, and it's a really pleasing look. But I will say 100mm or 105, that's a very sweet spot for portraits as well. A lot of people just use a prime 100 or 105 for their portraits, and that's all they use sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I love the 70-200. Really, really nice, versatile range, and great. Now, Kevin is in chat and has chimed in and says this is on a crop sensor.
Oh, so, okay. Well, in that case,
I mean, you could start with a 50 then, because that gets you to 70-ish.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, then that changes that for sure.
But would you still say 70-200? I think I would.
I think I would too, because it's so 70 on a crop sensor is what?
Almost 100.
Almost 100. Yeah. I mean, anytime you're approaching 100 and beyond for portraits, I think you'll see how pleasing they can look. Especially if you shoot really wide aperture, you got to be careful with that, because you can get a situation where the eyes are in focus and the nose is out of focus, or but typically you just get a pleasing look with that lens.
Yeah, I agree. Andrew has the Nikon 50 millimeter. I know it's a cheaper lens and a bit soft. I mean, not, not bad. Thoughts on
Oh.
keeping, trading in, or what lens to trade it in for? And Andrew, I believe you're on a D7000 something. So you're on a crop sensor as well with a Canon, or sorry, with a Nikon 50. Nikon has the 35-1.8, which then gets you closer to 50, which I think is a fantastic walk around. And that 35 is a very reasonable price.
Yes, it is.
And they also have a 40 macro, don't they? A 40-2.8 that is
they might have an older one. I have the 105 macro, but I've
that's
never
a
used
nice lens.
Now that 105 macro, I will say, just like as a little side note, it's freaking awesome. I mean, and it's a macro lens, and I use it for portraits more than anything. I actually used it today for headshots, and they look spectacular. It's so sharp, color, bokeh, everything is so great out of that lens. That's
nice. I think that's important for people to know. Just because it's labeled macro doesn't mean that it's confined to being only doing macro. It just means that it can focus, and it's still a 100 millimeter lens.
Yeah, and it's great because then you have it's dual purpose. You've got a macro lens that's awesome, super sharp, great color. It's a prime lens, and then you've got a portrait lens. So it's kind of 2 for 1.
Yeah,
and it's not super expensive.
Yeah. No, it's not, but it's getting a little pricey. But
it is a little, you can find them used though. I buy a lot of used glass. I recommend that all the time. B&H used, anywhere I mean, so often you'll find a lens that's barely even been touched, and you can save a lot of money on it.
That's a great tip. That's great. Yep. So Andrew, just we said that there's a 35-1.8 that I think you could find a little bit more versatile. But 50 for nice portraits, especially of your dog, your cute little corgi. Kevin wants to know any tips for using Lightroom CC to export pics with metadata and edits performed. I know, Kevin, so you were trying to get us that for the show. I don't know off the top of my head. I keep Lightroom CC updated because I say I need to use it to be able to answer questions, but clearly I haven't done my job because I am not very comfortable with Lightroom CC. You use it much, David?
Nah, I did at first. I thought, oh, this will be so great. And then I don't know. It feels like it has the potential to be great someday, but I'm just not ready for it.
Yeah. And our last question, another one. So we've got 2 stumps. Kevin stumped us, and now Tim. Tim wants to know, he's the Nixplay versus Skylight photo frames. Skylight seems to be heavily advertised on social media, and the actual frame looks far better than a Nixplay. Do we have any opinions about those? So Nixplay, I know about. I've done reviews. I think I've done 2 and put it on my Christmas list. It's going to be on my Christmas list again this year. I have one, and my mom has one that we gifted to her. I love them. It's not the best looking frame. The quality of the pictures isn't amazing, but they easily interface online with Google Photos or Dropbox. So today, when I was looking at old pictures and finding those fun ones and finding the tree frog one, I was also finding ones of my kids and my mom and stuff. In Google Photos, I just say, add to Barb's, my mom's name's Barbara, add to Barb's Nixplay in Google Photos. And now I know tonight when she gets home from work, there's going to be new photos showing up on her thing. All I had to do was that. So I love that integration. I just started to Google Skylight. I don't know about Skylight. Do you have any digital frames in your house, David?
I don't. It's one of those things I should have. And after being at your house, Toby, with all this Google, like everything, Google sweep the floor, Google, open the door.
Wait, no, I'm sweeping the floor.
No, I was like impressed. I mean, I know all that stuff exists. I just don't have as much of it going on. But maybe I will. Maybe I'll get a frame. That'd be cool to have.
I feel like they were a rage for a while, and then they those were the ones where you had to put an SD card in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was never really that interested in them. And then these Nixplay came out, and I was like, hey, this is kind of neat. And they've gotten even easier. And there's the one sitting upstairs underneath our TV. And honestly, every night I see a picture I haven't seen forever on it, because I think we have about 1,000 or 1,500 connected to it. So it's cycling through those.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I'm looking right now on Amazon at the Skylight frame. It's a 10-inch. It's a little bit bigger than Nixplay, though they offer bigger ones as well. It's just $160. touch screen to connect to wireless networks. Hey, that's nice because the Nix Play is not that easy to set up. Actually, it's a little frustrating, but once it is, it's been rock solid. This has got really good reviews as well. I don't know. So they both seem decent. The thing is, can the skylight connect so nicely to your picture places? That's my question. That's what makes the Nix Play awesome for me. If I had to do, this roundabout way to get pictures onto it, I probably would have stopped using it the moment after I got it. So, yeah.
Something to think about.
Yeah, things to think about. Maybe I'll take a look at both of these and pick one of them to be on the Christmas wish list. So.
Tim Scott says, it's Alexa over here, David. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little bit more of an Amazon house.
I'm not partial.
Yeah, they're both very good. Both very good. And there actually is, I know this, there is an Alexa skill tied to the Nix Play where you can swap playlists out. So maybe your parents are coming over and you want to just impress them with how many pictures you have of them. You could be like, right before they walk in the door, you could be like, Alexa, tell my Nix Play to start the parents playlist. And it'll just move that picture group onto the frame for you automatically. So that's something kind of cool. And for those of you watching and saying, why do you have all this stuff listening to you in your house? Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Because it's fun.
It's too late. I mean, if you're worried about that stuff, it's all out there. So I can't even think about a product without it showing up in my feed as a advertisement. So.
I know that's the thing. Tim said the skylight, frames are heavily advertised on social media. For you, Tim, I haven't ever seen it. So you search digital frame at some time and they're like, we're going to get this guy. He's going to buy one of our frames. Here it is on Facebook. Here it is on your Instagram. Here it is on your cat food.
Oh, I guarantee you it's in my feed right now. I just got to open my phone.
It's scary. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And on that note, David Carr, thanks so much for hanging out with us on your Wednesday evening. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. I love being a part of this. And I just love having an opportunity to use my microphone.
I love listening to you on your microphone. It's just fantastic. Very, very good. If you're not already following David Carr, you should on Instagram. That is linked right down below this video. Go give him a follow. It's the least you can do.
Please do.
And if you've watched this if you watched this long, please take a moment, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. And you want to know more about some of the articles that we talked about today, those are in the show notes right down below, along with those deals to B&H. And if you want to check out Squarespace, remember to start at squarespace.com/photorectv. Using that link really does help our channel out. Thanks so much, chat room. Thank you for hanging out with us on your Wednesday evening. If you're not watching this live, well, thank you for watching. And if you're not a subscriber, well, you could do that as well. I know I just gave you a lot of things to do. If you do one, go follow David Carr on Instagram because that's fulfilling. He posts nice pictures and you get to see nice pictures. Do that. But you can do those other things too if you want.
Thanks for the plug. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right, everybody. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks a lot.